Madu upon your Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem, Yasha Allah. Blessing of the Sabbath. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Hashabath, Bashalawam, Thawada, Aman. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the Sabbath in peace. Thank you, so be it. The Ha'ayim Ma'ad Asherayim Akkad, Psalms 121. Anya Harayim Ayanya Al Haharim Mayan Yabawa Isaiah Yabawa Mayahawa Sha'isha Shamayim Wa Arataza La'a Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala'a Yanawam Shashamar Shashamar Kahana La'a Yanawam Wala'a Yayashun Shashamar Yasharallah Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Tazalia I'll Yad Yum Yum Ya Yawamam Ashamash La Hakaya Wairak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makal Ra Yashamar Napasha Yahweh Yashamar Hawalakia Waba Wa'aya Ma'aitha Wa'aid Iwalam Bahasham Yahawashai Thawada Aman. Psalms 121. I will lift up mine eyes into the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen. Shema Yasharella, Hail Israel. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Allah Haynawa, Yahweh, Akkad. Shema Yasharallah Yahweh Allah Haynawa Yahweh Akkad. Shema Yasharallah Yahweh Allah Haynawa Yahweh Akkad. Deuteronomy 6 and 4, Hail Israel, the Lord our power is one Lord. Amen.
drink? No. Did you take your medicine yet? Not yet.
Whoever just dialed in, please go on mute.
That's good for you.
Tapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abba Yanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Haya, Shamka, Yahweh, Malakothka, Thaba'a, Ratazawanka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'arataza, Ka, Bashemayim, Nathan Lanawa, Lakam, Yawam, Za Wasalaknawa, Kabawathnawa, Kasalaknawa, Kabawathyanawa, Wala'a, Habiyanawa, O Nasayawan, Abo, Hawashinawa, Marai, Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwath, Waha'ala, Wahatha Pa'arath, La'ayawalam, Amen. Matthew 6:9. After this manner, therefore pray ye, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Ha'ashara Matazawath, 10 Commandments. La'ah, Yahaya, Laka, Alahayim, Akariim, Alpanya. La'ah, Ta'aisha, Laka, Pasol, Wala'ah, Ta'aibadam. La'ah, Talakwakath, Shamwa, Yahweh, Alahayaka, La Shua. Zakar, Ath, Hayawam, Hashabath, La Kodashwa, Kabad, Abiyaka, Wa Amaka, La'ah, Taratazak, La'ah, Tana'a, La'ah, Tagana, La'ah, Ta'aina, Shakur, La'ah, Takamad, Ko, Ashra, La Ra'ayaka, Amen. Exodus 20:3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet the neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet the neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen. All Israel, Shabbat, wherever you are. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Paria Hagapin, Thawada Amun, La Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Ath Yasha Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, or the Most High, in the name of Christ, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it, to Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. Madwa, Panyua, Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatha Yahweh, Hagadol, Rakhwam, Abiyah, Wanara'a, Aliyawan, Malak, Shal, Shamayim, Wa'arataza, Wakol, Dabayim, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Arawanawa, Ahabnawa, Hapala, Yawaitaza, Yahweh Shai, Zakarnawa, Yahweh, Baratazawan, Ainka, Yasha Allah, Izarnawa, Bana, Wasap, Yasha Allah, O, Nanawa, Yum Yun, Aitha, Kayawumyum, Makwadam, Baba Kwasha, Shalak, Mayaka Allah, Wahataza Wadak, Alahayim, La, Maganawa, Rapanawa, Washamar, Alnawa, Ba'aikwar, Shalak, Haroka, Sho, Yahweh Shai, Lanawa, Lalamanawa, Rabiam, Kakama, Sabawana, Wada'aith, Sho, Debarka, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Thawada, from Yad, Wa'iwalam, Amun. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, or the Most High, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible Most High power, King of heaven and earth and all things living. And also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai, or Christ. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably, your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel. Most High, we beg you right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever. So be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the law. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Ha-Thawara. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us light to see. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Awar, Lara Awath. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Quran, Ha'ayol, La Quran, Ha'aim. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Hashaman, Zayath, Lamashak, Yasha Allah. Yasha Allah Yeshabwa will be seated. All right. Shalom Yasha'Allah. To those that's on the teleconference, those that's watching the live stream, again, Shalom, Ashar, Ra'ash Shana, or Happy New Year, as well as Ashar Kadash, Happy New Moon, as well as Ashar Shabbat, Happy Sabbath, right? So we have a lot of things going on today. It is a new moon, but it is also the beginning of our months, which is the meaning that this is the beginning of a new year for us, right? So for those who are still fervent, still fresh in the spirit, you should give yourselves a pat on the back, a round of applause for making it to another year. But most importantly, giving up thanksgiving or thanks to the Most High for allowing us to continue in the spirit to reach another year, right? We went to scriptures this evening in the class in reference to us getting our spirits or our temples, the sanctuary, which is our spiritual house in this body, cleansed and prepared for the upcoming new year. All things considered that we know we have to do as far as for the holy days, but it also means to do a self-examination and clean out some filth that we have picked up over the last year, right? Over the last several months, to do a reevaluation and clean and restore yourselves to now be, have enough to continue on and forge through for the next upcoming year. So all of these things is what's now on our, or should be on our radar moving forward as we get into or prepare for the next upcoming high holy day, which is the Pesach or the Passover, coming up on March 30th at sundown, right? So we will be holding the Passover coming up. It will be at our normal location at the Ramada Inn. So if you need any further guidance on locations for those that's new who might want to attend, please contact myself or the other priests concerning those issues. For those who are new, this is Haya Asherella Kanas, which is in the Hebrew, the congregation of Israel. Why the congregation of Israel? Because when you read in the Bible, the Most High's chosen people are the people of Israel, 12 tribes. And each one of those tribes, as the Lord says in the scriptures, is like a nation within themselves, a company of nations. We have 12 companies of nations that make up one vainglorious nation. And we now have to go into the scriptures to understand what the Most High has promised and given to those tribes, to that nation. We understand through the scriptures that through disobedience, our ancestors, those who forefathers came over in the diaspora on slave ships in the 1600s, as well as those who ancestors were those of the Native American Seminole Indians, as well as the so-called Mexicans, as well as the so-called Hispanics throughout North, Central, and South America. So you have a mixture of the Indians, the Native Indians that were here prior to the conquistadors and the Spaniards arriving on the shores of the Americas, as well as those of Negroid descent pertaining to so-called Negroes, those from the Caribbeans, and Haitians. We make up, not to say that the Haitians are not in the Caribbean there as well, but there's a distinction between the tribes, right? So we make up, or those entities make up the 12 lost tribes in the nation of Israel. So it is our duty, once we are now coming into the understanding of the Bible, we now have to do, as the Lord says, come together. So it's the gathering or the congregating of Israel under the auspices of what's written in the Bible, right? The laws, statutes, and commandments that provides us ceremonial holy days, provides us a dietary law, provides us a moral code ethic, and provides us civil codes on how we live amongst each other with the other nations, right? So all of these things is found in the scriptures as it pertains to laws. You also find references of history in the scriptures. Some of what we're going to go through today during the Sabbath service, found in the Maccabees. You also find prophecies in these scriptures, things that are still for to come as we're preparing for the second coming of the Savior, who commonly to the world is known as Jesus Christ, but in the ancient Hebrew, it's Yahawashah Mashiach, or the anointed Savior, right? So there's a lot of things, examples, testimonies that we find in the scriptures that allows us to fulfill our destiny, to fulfill our calling that the Most High has chosen us for. This is why we come to the classes. This is why we pay attention to the Sabbath services and the lessons contained in them, so that we can now build up our spirits unto perfection, right? Christ said, be perfect as the Most High is perfect, right? So this is what we are now trying to do. Not to say that we will reach perfection right now in this day and age, but we should strive for perfection. That's how you reach new heights, all right? So today, on the Sabbath service, which is the 7th day of the week, right? I know most people look at this as the 6th day of the week, but it is the 7th day of the week, beginning at the sundown on Friday sunset. That is the beginning of the day, according to the scriptures, right? We are keeping the Sabbath day service, or the worship to the Most High, by going through his word and using edification to understand what is the intention of our people today. All right. So my name is Kahan Samak. To those that are listening and watching right now, some of the Akim are delayed, and Akwath are delayed in coming from, I guess, last night's Namud service. But even when we're doing the prayers, and it's just one priest here doing the prayers, my expectation is that those who are watching and listening are also doing the prayers at home as well, that they're also standing and facing towards Jerusalem as well, right? So it shouldn't be that we just, I mean, if you're up, I know some people may have certain ailments and illnesses, but you can still try to the best of your ability to stand and face, sit and face, arms raised, hands raised, whatsoever, and pray toward the land of Jerusalem, where the temple used to be, but we still pray towards Jerusalem in the spirit of praying to the Most High, so that he could hear our prayers. So that's why I'll even say, Amadwa Yasha Allah, or stand Jerusalem, to those that's listening as well as watching. So my name is Kahan Samak, as well did the service last night, or priest support. That's the literal translation of the name. And I will be presiding over today's Sabbath service lesson. We will be in the Apocrypha, the book of 2nd Maccabees, and the 9th and 10th chapters. All right. So for those who have not been following, when you read in the Maccabees, this is during the time of the Greek Empire. This is very, this is a good reference. There's a reference stories here because it names certain Greek figures as well as Israelite figures. It names certain times and periods that you may be able to find separate out of the scriptures, and Greek as well as Roman history, to do a corroboration with what you see in the scriptures. Certain movies and documentaries and things are based off of history as well as the Bible. So it is always sometimes good to pay attention to detail, pay attention to years, pay attention to the certain names and regions. And if you want to go do further investigation to get even more of the story. Sometimes the names that we read may not directly influence or impact us to care about them because they're Greeks and heathens. However, we can do some cross-referencing when we see other things, when you're watching a movie or you're seeing a documentary, or you're reading a book and you're reading about the same period or the same timeline. You then get a full picture, a full scope of what was going on with Israel at the same time other events were transpiring. So that's why it's good when the Most High puts certain years in, he puts certain names in. It may not seem important off the cuff, but later on, it may be important, and you may come back to that and point that little small verse or name out and be like, oh, now I understand why his name is there. Or now I see the importance of why that name is mentioned, or why the Lord now has us seeing things more 2 and 5 years down the road. All right. Sometimes it happens that way. All right. So we're going to be reading in 2nd Maccabees, the 9th chapter and the 1st verse. This is during the times where Israel has been going through minor wars, major wars with the heathen, some of them trying to come and eradicate us, but we had champion saviors starting off. We had champions and saviors starting off with a family known as the Maccabees, and their father Mattathias, who had sons who now have taken on the role after he passed away of being the leaders of the nation, trying to keep and retain the heritage of our people, trying to keep and retain the name of Israel amongst the nations, because we were looking to be enslaved and eradicated. So we're reading now, about to embark on one of their Greek rulers, Antiochus Epiphanes, and what he tried to do against Israel at a certain time in history. So without further ado, this is 2nd Maccabees, the 9th chapter and the 1st verse. And it reads, it says, about that time came Antiochus with dishonor out of the country of Persia, for he had entered the city called Persepolis, and went about to rob the temple and to hold the city. Whereupon the multitude, running to defend themselves with their weapons, put them to flight. And so it happened that Antiochus, being put to flight of the inhabitants, returned with shame, right? So here's Antiochus, as most conquerors do when they're looking for resources, when they're looking for wealth, they go into another region with the intent of robbing them and conquering them for other purposes, right? Let's see what these other purposes was, right? Because we just see that he went there, but there's a little bit of backstory to him going into Persia, or why he wanted to go into Persia. So to link with 2nd Maccabees 9 and 2, give me 1 second here, and I'll take this. We're going to go to 1st Maccabees, the 3rd chapter. Third chapter. And I think the 26th verse. I'm going to start at 25. So 1st Maccabees 3 and 25. So it reads in 1st Maccabees 3 and 25, it says, then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them, insomuch as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas, right? So at this point, Judas was winning a lot of wars. And as we read in the Old Testament, that the Most High tells you, I believe it's in Deuteronomy 4:25, that he will put the fear and the dread of you in the nations, right? The Most High can change the hearts and minds and the spirits of the nations, that they will fear you even just by hearing your name, right? So that was actually it's 2:25, Deuteronomy 2:25. Which says, this day will I begin to put the dread of thee and the fear of thee upon the nations that are under the whole heaven, who shall hear a report of thee and shall tremble and be in anguish because of thee. So just based on a report, just based on what they heard that had happened or was transpiring, the people began to melt. The same thing happened during the time of Joshua with Rahab the harlot. When you read in Joshua, I believe the 1st and 2nd chapter, you hear the report that Rahab gives of the nations, or the heathen, that they were afraid of Israel because of what the Most High had done to allow us to conquer the Hamites, right? They all began to melt. They was going to run away. So in the same thing here, Judas's fame started to spread about, and all nations began to talk about him, right? He was that champion fighter, defender for his people, and everybody began to take note. So it says here in verse 27, back in First Maccabees 3, now in 27. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation, right? So him being the ruler of his people, when he's hearing about this Jewish fighter fighting and defending for Israel, he got upset and mad, right? Because usually those who are in top positions, they don't want to hear a report. They don't want to hear the fame of somebody else because that threatens their position. And as a leader, that threatens his seat when everyone else is talking about someone else, right? It says, now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. So because he's hearing all of these different things that Judas is doing and winning these wars, he figures now I have to go get a much larger and stronger army to go and take him out. If he is what he say he is, I need to gather all my forces to go and take him out, right? It says, verse 28, he opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. So that's what usually happens when a top nation goes and conquers. They don't always just go and conquer and just kill everybody. They go and give them an opportunity to be an ally to them, to be up under them, right? To pay them tribute or taxes. And at the same time, join their armies or join their ranks. So when a time for war arises, they now, as an ally, have to also join in and go and fight with them. So what he's doing now is saying, I'm going to prepare them for wars that are maybe upcoming, not only with him or them, the ones that they were looking to go and conquer, but even this one man, Judas, and those of his people, which is Israel. So he gave them pay for a year and let them know that when the time comes for us to go and fight the war, you have to be ready, right? If you remember in the storyline, when you read in the Old Testament with Nebuchadnezzar, he did the same thing with Israel, where they allowed Israel to go and do our own thing. But when it was time for war, he called upon Israel and Israel did not join. And he was upset with Israel not joining. And then he went to fight the war and said, I'll come back afterwards to come and deal with you. Because now that seems that you're being a defector or a traitor, right? Something's not right. Me being the top nation. So usually this always happens, even today, right? Same thing happens with the United States and America and the other countries, that they have allies that they've gone over and presented themselves as the dominant force. So it says in verse 29, nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed and that the tributes in the country were small because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land in taking away the laws which have been of old time, right? So as he's gathering all of these people from these different nations and he's trying to pay for a year, right? To comfort them and quiet them down and that they would be in charge and have a whole bunch of gold and silver, his money started to run short, right? And the reason why the money ran short, the scriptures is letting you know, is that the Lord was plaguing him. He was plaguing his realm because he had gone and taken away the laws, statutes, and commandments away from Israel, keeping them. That's what we read in the beginning in First Maccabees, when they first came around, and how they stopped us from keeping their laws and forced us to follow their laws, right? Forced us to not even call ourselves a Jew. Forced us, if we circumcise our children, that they would be killed, the parents and the children. So because of this, the Most High began to dry up their resources. So now he doesn't have any money. He doesn't have that which he thought he had to pay everybody. So now he's in a strait. It says, verse 30, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer. So now without any money, after a while, what's going to happen? He's not going to have the resources of an army to go and fight in his wars because he can't pay them, right? It says, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. So he was going around, they was conquering and winning battles, taking lands, victories, spoils, all of that. Everything was good and prosperous. But then he went and dealt with Israel and took away our vital resource, which is the keeping of the commandments. Taking our gold and taking our silver and everything else, that's one thing. But when you refrain Israel from keeping the laws, statutes, and commandments, then now that's a big problem. The Most High doesn't forget that. So he went and started to plague Antiochus and the realm. Same thing that is happening right now. When the Most High puts certain boundaries upon the nations and they cross that threshold, then the Most High starts to go and deal with them. That's what's happening even today. With us, we are not being taught our identity by those who are in power. So the Lord began to do what? Bring down their resources, bring down their allies, where now they don't have the friendship that they used to have, right? Now the Most High is allowing certain figures and things to be set up to even foster this turmoil. So we see an example of what happened with Antiochus, and it correlates to the same things or the same vibrations that we see happening right now. So again, it says he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before. For he had abounded above the kings that were before him, right? So he superseded everyone that was his predecessor as far as for when he conquered and won the victories and got the spoils. Verse 31, wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries and to gather much money. Verse 32, so he left Lysias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again, right? So he's into Persia, 2 Maccabees, the 9th chapter. He's going there for the intent to get the tributes, to get the spoils, because he can't pay all of his armies and his soldiers, and he can't persuade those who are soldiers for hire any longer. It's all gone, right? So that's why now we see him reading this in 2 Maccabees. He's tried to go in, but failed, right? These Persians just didn't allow him to easily come. They went and defended their territory and had him bounce, all right? So this is the backstory for that. So this is 1 Maccabees 3. I read from verse 25 all the way down to 33. So now let's go back to 2 Maccabees, the 9th chapter. So 2 Maccabees, I'll read 1 and 2 again now with that background. It says, about that time came Antiochus with dishonor out of the country of Persia, for he had entered the city called Persepolis and went about to rob the temple and to hold the city. Whereupon the multitude, running to defend themselves with their weapons, put them to flight. And so it happened that Antiochus, being put to flight of the inhabitants, returned with shame. All right. So him now being a ruler, him now prior to that, superseding all the kings prior to him, now he lost one. And he is feeling shameful, and he's about to return back to his own place. Verse 3. Now when he came to Ecbatane, news was brought to him what had happened unto Nicanor and Timotheus, right? So now these were generals of such, or leaders of the host that was left in charge that went and fought against Israel, fought against Judas and the army and failed, right? So news is now coming to him after he's just left a loss or defeat from Persia. So now let's see what things happen with Nicanor and Timotheus. So first we're going to start with Timotheus. First Maccabees, the 5th chapter. So this is going to link with the 3rd verse. So 2nd Maccabees 9:3. This is 1st Maccabees chapter 5 and verse 34. So 2nd Maccabees chapter 5 and 34. It says, then the host of Timotheus, knowing that it was Maccabees, fled from him. Wherefore he smote them with a great slaughter, so that they were killed of them that day about 8,000 men. This done, Judas returned aside to Masphah, and after he had assaulted it, he took it and slew all the males therein, and received the spoils thereof, and burnt it with fire, right? So unlike some of our other rulers or leaders, such as King Saul, right? Judas was ruthless. He didn't leave anybody. He said it killed all the males. He didn't leave anybody to then come to escape and then come back and get revenge. So here is Timotheus, one of the captains or leaders of the host that's coming against Judas and them, and he has been put to flight and they have been assaulted and slaughtered. 8,000 men, right? And then afterwards, he went to Masphah, killed them, took their spoils, and then burnt the cities, right? Left nothing for them to go and left inhabited. So now they have to, those who was left, the women and children, if they weren't taken, they had to flee, right? It says, verse 36, from thence went he and took Casphon and Magad and Bosor and the other cities of the country of Gilead. It says, after these things gathered Timotheus another host, right? So he's the captain of the host, and that host, that army, got destroyed. So now he's going to get in another one. Now one would say, oh, well, he killed all the males, but sometimes the leaders of the host or the captain of the host doesn't always go out to war, right? We see that in the scriptures in the Old Testament with even King David. King David had certain armies go out, but when you read it, it says David and his army or whatever slaughtered or killed this, but David wasn't physically there until it came to a time when the men said, listen, you got to come now, because if your name is being attached to this, you now have to present yourself there, or else someone else's name is going to get attached to it, right? So this is the same thing here. Timotheus is one whose name is being attached with this army that got slaughtered, but he wasn't physically there. Now he's went and gathered another one. It says in verse 37 again, and after these things gathered Timotheus another host and encamped against Raphan beyond the brook. Verse 38. So Judas sent men to espy the host, who brought him word, saying, all the heathen that be round about us are assembled unto them, even a very great host, right? So wherever Judas and the men were, Timotheus had them as allies, because he said all the heathens that's round about us have gathered against us, right? So it's like you going into a realm and you thinking they're neutral, but until he come and that's his ally, now they become your enemy because he's your enemy, right? Verse 39. He had also hired the Arabians to help them, and they have pitched their tents beyond the brook, ready to come and fight against thee. Upon this, Judas went to meet them. So you have all these heathen, but then it even singles out the Arabians, right? So when we speak about, you know, the nations or the enemies of Israel, all of them at some point in time came against us. All of them at different points in time, different areas, different places, against different rulers and different leaders of our people. They all came against us, right, for their own objectives. So here we see the Arabians have formed an alliance with them to come and conquer us, right? And then it says, now Judas, standing tall, went out to meet him. He didn't back down just because they had the strength in numbers or they were a whole congregate of a multitude. Didn't matter because he has the Most High on his side. Verse 40, then Timotheus said unto the captains of his host, when Judas and his host come near the brook, if he pass over first unto us, we shall not be able to withstand him, for he will mightily prevail against us. But if he be afraid and camp beyond the river, we shall go over unto him and prevail against him. So he's observing his tactics. It says if he's bold enough to cross that river, we can't stand and fight against that guy. No way. But if he comes out and he stands and spies all of us camped around him and chooses not to cross, he's afraid and we're going to be able to beat him, right? That was the logic. Verse 42. Now when Judas came near the brook, because it's like he caused the scribes of the people to remain by the brook, unto whom he gave commandments, saying, suffer no man to remain in the camp, but let all come to the battle, right? So he told the scribes to stand back, but all the men, they have to now come over. Don't let nobody else stand back. And they all got to come and fight. It says, so he went first over unto them and all the people after him, right? So he's taking the initiative. He's taking the fight to them, right? A lot of times, you know, there's a standoff. You see in certain movies where, you know, the king will come out and this king will come out or that captain come out and they come out and talk to see if somebody's going to wave the white flag or lay down their weapons and fall under them. Judas ain't doing none of that. He's like, look, I see them all, even the Arabians over there, I see them all coming against me. But in the back of his mind, or slightly in the back of his mind, the front of his mind, he knows that he's fighting a righteous cause, right? And he has the Most High with him. So he's choosing to go and take the fight to them. It says, verse 43 again, so like verse 43, so he went first over unto them and all the people after him. Then all the heathen, being discomfited, made their weapons and fled unto the temple that was at Carnaim, right? So here it is, you know, they had the numbers, but Timotheus already set the standard. He already laid it out. Look, this is the sign that we're going to do. If we cross, we can't win, right? Because he's too strong. We've heard his reputation and his fame. But if he don't, he's afraid and we can take him. So once they saw him and all the men start to come across that river, that was it. They all threw down their weapons. They all cast everything away and began to run. So imagine that if you've seen that, if you are a neutral party watching this battle play out and you're looking at the small group of numbers here and this whole force over here running from the army that now is traveling with Judas, right? That fame continues on. Right, that message carries on. That man, he even caused thousands to flee. It was only a few hundred of them, and they all ran. So now most people start to think about what is it with him? He wins every battle. He's causing even the masses to run from him. So that becomes, you know, a thing. Right? It's the same thing that's going to happen with Israel in this last army and fight that's going to come. That even we're going to have the angels is going to be with us to fight. And after that, ain't going to be no more war. Nobody's going to want to continue and fight once they see what the Most High is going to allow and put in the spirits and the strength of his people. It's not going to happen. All right. So we'll stop there. As you read on, you can see what happened. But for the most part, Timotheus and his army was put to flight, destroyed, and that whatever they thought that they was going to do against Israel, it didn't happen. They didn't win, right? So that's what happened with Timotheus. Now, let's go see what happened with Nicanor. Remember, this is the news that's being brought to Antiochus, right? So now we got Timotheus. Let's go to Nicanor. So now let's go to the 7th chapter. 7th chapter, and I'm going to start at verse 26. So in 1 Maccabees 7:26, it says, then the king sent Nicanor, one of his honorable princes, a man that bare deadly hate unto Israel, with commandment to destroy the people. So this, again, we read this several months back, but just to put it in perspective about this man that's now coming against Israel, this man is said bear deadly hate unto the people. So that man, it's just that he didn't like us. It's like he just, you know, sometimes you don't like somebody and you tolerate them. But his says it bear deadly hate unto Israel, which means that if any point in time he had an opportunity to cause harm, physical harm, he would have taken that opportunity and done it. So now he's the one that's being put over coming and destroying the people Israel, right? It says, so Nicanor came to Jerusalem with a great force and sent unto Judas and his brethren deceitfully with friends words, saying, let there be no battle between me and you. I will come with a few men that I may see you in peace. Now, what happened with Timotheus was before this that we're reading here. So this man is not taking the same route. He's not going about it the same way, right? He's like, you know what? I'm not just going to come and just try to meet force with force. I'm going to try to use a little logic if I can. I'm going to see if I can catch him off guard if possible. And then I can apprehend him, right? Same thing happened with, like when you look at Samson, when Samson had the spirit of might given to him by the Most High, right? And he was, you know, he had the Nazarite vow from birth where he's not supposed to cut his hair. So now here it is. They had to try to find his weakness or catch him off guard in order to try to kill him or try to apprehend him, right? Same thing here. He's trying to catch Judas off guard, trying to find his weakness to see if he can use that to an advantage in order to apprehend and or kill Judas. So this is what he's saying. Listen, let's not fight, right? I got a great force, but so let's not fight. I'm gonna bring a few men, you bring a few men, and we're gonna come talk it out, right? Verse 29, he came therefore to Judas, and they saluted one another peaceably. Howbeit, the enemies were prepared to take away Judas by violence, right? So he came and presented himself as if everything was cool. They saluted one another, right? Dapped each other up, whatever they did at the time when the armies is meeting there, and they probably sat down and, hey, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. But the spirit kicked in where he's observing what's going on with him and his men, that they posture themselves a different way, or even their looks is giving themselves off. And he realized that he's trying to capture, he's trying to do something deceitful and apprehend us, right? So it says, howbeit the enemies were prepared to take away Judas by violence, verse 30, which thing after it was known to Judas, to wit, that he came unto him with deceit, he was so afraid of him and would see his face no more. So once he realized that his intention was to catch him off guard, and he was in a position where he could have been apprehended, he got afraid, right? That fear set in where it's like, you know what? I'm caught off guard. So now what did he do? He got himself out of that situation and did not want to be in his space anymore to see him face to face. So he left, right? Later on, as we read in the storyline of Maccabees, Jonathan fell victim to that too, right? He fell victim to one of the other princes that did the same thing. Don't worry about it. Leave your armies and your soldiers behind. We ain't got to do this. And what happened? They got captured. And then Jonathan fell victim to being killed. So same thing here. Judas almost fell victim to this right here, but the spirit kicked in where he realized it before it happened and they was able to escape. So reading on, verse 31, Nicanor also, when he saw that his counsel was discovered, went out to fight against Judas beside Carthasalama, where there were slain of Nicanor's side about 5,000 men, and the rest fled into the city of David, right? So he realized that, hey, something wasn't right, and boom, he went after him to go fight, right? And a lot of his men got killed in that instant. Then as you read further on, it didn't stop there. It continued to go in certain strategic places to go and try to take them as strongholds and continue to fight. But ultimately, Nicanor would meet his fate as well. So I'm going to skip through all that. I stopped at 32. You can continue to read it, but I'm going to jump down to verse 46. Actually, I'm going to start at 44. So in verse 44, it says, now when Nicanor's host saw that he was slain, they cast their weapons away and fled. Then they pursued after them a day's journey from Adasa unto Gazara, sounding an alarm after them with their trumpets. So we see now in the continuing of the fight, Nicanor was killed, right? And his people and his army fled. Verse 46, whereupon they came forth out of all the towns of Judea round about and closed them in, so that they, turning back upon them that pursueth them, were all slain with the sword, and not one of them was left. So the same thing happened with Timotheus, where all of those men got killed. Here is the same thing with Nicanor. He gets killed, and all those that fled, they got trapped, and all of them got killed, right? Verse 47, afterwards, they took the spoils and the prey and smote off Nicanor's head and his right hand, which he stretched out so proudly, and brought them away, hanged them up toward Jerusalem, right? So he made a lot of blasphemous, vainglorious pomp to what he was going to do to Israel and to the temple and everything else, right? That he was going to do this, that, and the third against the Most High's people and destroy the temple. With his right hand, he said that he was going to do these things. And it happened that what? They went and cut off his head and his arm, right? And put them up as a testimony not to come against the Most High and his people, right? When we're in our glory, when we're in the spirit, you can't fight against us. Can't come against us, right? Same thing was known by other nations as well when you read it later on in the Apocrypha. So I'm going to stop there at verse 47. So I read from 44 to 47. So this is the news that's now being brought to Antiochus as he's coming back from Persia, himself having been defeated. And now he finds out that two of his princes have failed in their mission to go and take out little old Israel, right? Little old Judas Maccabees. He finds out that they've been killed, slaughtered, and the armies have been taken away as well. So now, let's go back to 2 Maccabees 9 and verse 3, and then move forward. So it says in 2 Maccabees 9 and 3, now when he came to Ecbatane, news was brought unto him what had happened unto Nicanor and Timotheus. Then swelling with anger, he thought to avenge upon the Jews the disgrace done unto him by those that made him flee, right? So he's like, look, I'm mad as I don't know what right now for what just happened to me when I went to Persia. Now I'm hearing about Judas and the Israelites, these Jews. I'm about to take my anger out on them from what happened to me in Persia, right? I'm about to at least vindicate myself by taking them out. This is what his thinking was. It says, verse 4 again, then swelling with anger, he thought to avenge upon the Jews the disgrace done unto him by those that made him flee. Therefore commanded he his chariot man to drive without ceasing and to dispatch the journey. the judgment of Yahweh or power now following him. For he had spoken proudly in this sort, that he would come to Jerusalem and make it a common burying place of the Jews, right? So he's now in his chariot and he's telling his chariot, drive faster, drive faster. I got to get there sooner. I'm going to level that whole place. I'm going to bury them all, right? This is now in his vehemency against the Jews for what had happened to him by the hand of the Persians, right? So now what he doesn't realize, as it states there, the judgment of the Most High now following him. So as he's going off on his mission, he already has a bounty on his head from the Most High. The judgment, the curse is already about to start. Him not knowing, he's ignorant of it, right? It says, verse 5, but the Lord Almighty, the power of Israel, smote him with an incurable and invisible plague, right? So here it is, while he's on his way to come and fight against Jerusalem, on his way to Jerusalem, the Most High gives him a plague, right? It says it's invisible, couldn't be seen, didn't know where it came from. He didn't drink anything, he didn't step in anything. It wasn't based on the environment or anything like that we have caught this disease, and it's incurable. So this, sometimes when people get diseases and you're thinking that maybe the doctor, it's not going to happen. This one for him was incurable. He could have took all the best medicines, the medicine to cure it, wouldn't have cured it, right? Remember, the Most High is the one that controls all things. So if it's his will that you're going to be healed, he can use water to heal you if you need to, right? Doesn't need that specific herb. The Most High can heal you from the heavens. But this one was not going to be healed because all the things that he had done and had spies to do against the Jews, now saying that he's going to destroy and make Israel a burying place, the Most High was done with him, right? Finished. Nothing he could do about it. So now he has this incurable and invisible plague. It says, for as soon as he had spoken these words, a pain of the bowels that was remediless came upon him, and sore torments of the inner parts. So as he's speaking the words, the pain started coming in, right? It takes every idle word, when you read it in the scripture with Yahweh said, every idle word that you speak of, that man speaketh, this is like instantaneous. Soon as he spoke uttered those words, the pain started to formulate in his body, right? And it was like, what the heck, right? What's going on here? And it says it was a sore torment of his inner parts. So this is unbearable. Like he couldn't even maintain. It's like sometimes you may have a stomach ache, but you can still make through it. You can still bear through. You can still probably go to work, right? And do normal things. But this one, nah, couldn't happen, right? It says, verse 6, and that most justly, for he had tormented other men's bowels with many and strange torments. So this is like what you read in Galatians 6 and 7. You can write this down real quick. So as it says, and that most justly. So the reason why these pains or this type of plague is coming upon him is because he had tormented other men in the same way, where he gave them a torment within the inner parts, right? So in Galatians 6 and 7, Galatians 6 and 7 says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap, right? So these verses, this scripture, this wisdom just doesn't apply to Israel. It's just not a word of caution for us that the same energy that we put out is the same energy that we're going to get back. It's just not meant for us. It's meant for everybody. All nations fall under this rule. That's why we read in Revelations 13, 9 and 10. He that leadeth in a captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints, because we're waiting for the Most High's word to catch effect. So here it is. This man had done the same things to other men. It now has come back on his own head. As I forget that Reverend said before, the chickens have come back to roost, right? When he made that comment pertaining to America, right? This now he was referring to all that had happened that they have done to others. Now it's coming back. So the same thing is now happening to Antiochus. So now let's continue reading. 2 Maccabees chapter 9. We have verse 7. It says, howbeit he nothing at all ceased from his bragging, but still was filled with pride. So now why this is to show you, like we read about Nicanor, it said that he bared deadly hate against the Jews. He now also at this moment, his pride is still clouding his judgment, that he is still bragging and saying all the stuff that he's going to do to Jerusalem or to the Jews, while he's still having this issue going on in his body, right? Saving face, because he was just the fame coming out of Persia, and those around him, he probably thought that they looked at him as weak, right? You're losing your grip. So now he's saying of what he's going to do to the Jews, but still going and having these issues in his body, right? It says, and commanding to haste the journey, right? And commanding to haste the journey means speed up, hurry up, faster, right? It says, but it came to pass that he fell down from his chariot, carried violently, so that having a sore fall, all the members of his body were much pain, right? So it's like, I forget that movie with, not Charlton, I think it's a Charlton Heston one, when they was riding the chariots and the cathedral is running around, and the thing came off and they fell, it crashed. That's the sight that I see of him running, speeding up in the chariot, faster, and they're going faster and faster, and as he's going, and all, boop, it hits something, and all of a sudden, boom, he flies out of the chariot and he lands on the ground, right? So now just due to the fall and already the pains that he had, his whole body's jacked up now. His whole body is all messed up, right? It says, verse 8, and thus he that a little afore command the waves of the sea, so proud was he beyond the condition of man, right? Because it says, when you pay attention to a little afore thought he might command the waves of the sea. Now remember, when you read in the gospel, when Yahushua and the disciples was in the ship and the waves started to rage and the disciples got afraid, and Yahushua said, oh, ye of little faith, right? Because they're with the Messiah, they're with the power, and they were afraid as if they were going to die, as if he was going to leave them to die. But then after he calmed them down, he calmed the waves, he calmed the sea, right? This being Yahushua. So here's Antiochus, who thinks he has this same type power to command the waves of the sea in his pride. So when you look at his name, Antiochus Epiphanes, God manifest on earth, he feels like he is the Most High. He feels like he is the power on earth that can control everything that's going on. But that happens due to pride, right? You get a little, you win a little, and then that pride sets in. That's why even with us, Yahushua said, the greater that you are, the more meek and humble you become, so that you don't get into that same seat like how he is, right? And it can happen to Israel. Sometimes you get a little, you win a little, you gain a little notoriety, and it goes to your head and puffs you up. And then pride sets in, and you can't see clear in your spiritual eye. So here he's that individual where, like I said, he won more than all the kings before him, and pride set in. So he's now thinking that a little aforetime, it says he had this thought that he can control and command even the waves of the sea. It says, so proud was he beyond the condition of man, and weighed the high mountains in a balance. Think about that. Remember when we was dealing, when the Most High sent Uriel to deal with Esdras, And they were going through all different types of things. And to bring Ezra down to size, the Most High told him to ask him, can you weigh the flame? Can you weigh a fire? Which is like, who can get the weight of a fire? The Most High can, right? But when you put it in perspective, it says, and weigh the high mountains in a balance. Now he's thinking that he can put everything in perspective as to not just the literal mountains, but the whole landscape of who and what should be doing what in this realm. Remember, mountains are like governments too. He's the one that thinks he controls the whole realm, let alone the physical wave and the sea and the mountains themselves. This is pride at its highest level. That's why it says pride, he was so proud beyond the condition of a man. That's pride, it's normal pride. But his was on a whole nother level, right? This is an abnormal sense of pride that he had. Now look at him. Now look what he has now come from and been brought down in an instant, within a few moments from him saying that he was going to do something, the pain settling in. Yo, we still going to take him out. Drive fast, drive fast. Oop. Bam. Now he's on the ground, right? Jacked up, right? So it says, and was now cast on the ground and carried in an horse litter, showing forth unto all of the manifest power of God. So this man was taken so high, he was sitting so high. Now it says that he's being carried in a horse litter. He's down there with the feces when the horses take a crap. Sometimes if you're in a city or you somewhere and you going on a path or a trail and you see a whole glob of doggone horse manure. The horse done took a dump. That's where he laid at. That's where he fell into. Now they got to take him up out of that, and he got all that horse manure all on him. This man was the king. Now he's brought down so low where he's in the midst of horse manure. And they looking at him. And not only is he in the midst of horse manure, but he's jacked up in pains with an incurable plague from the Most High, right? Sometimes, man, if you don't put that humble spirit, if you don't think about the things you say and do, the Lord will bring you down to size so that you can understand, right? He chastens us, as you read in the same book. He chastens us, but with the others, he allows them to get to their full height and then bring them down rough. Matter of fact, let me get that real quick. Just read this not too long ago. Give me a second here. Second Maccabees 6. Second Maccabees 6 and 13. So Second Maccabees 6 and 13, it reads, it says, for it is a token of his great goodness when wicked doers are not suffered any long time, but forthwith punished, right? So this man was a wicked doer at his highest level, right? It says, it is a token of his great goodness that he doesn't allow them to continue for much long, right? It says, for not as with other nations, whom the Lord patiently forbeareth to punish, till they be come to the fullness of their sins, so dealeth he with us, lest that, being come to the height of sin, afterwards he should take vengeance of us, right? That's what he did with Antiochus. He took vengeance with him because he has now come to the height of his sin. It's the same thing with the rulership of the nations. When you read it in the gospel, It says Yahushua, hold this. Let me go real quick to Luke. Luke 21:24. Luke 21:24, which says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword. The they is talking about Israel when we were in the straits during the time of 70 AD. It says, and shall be led away captive into all nations. Over time, Israel was led away captive all throughout the earth. It says, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, meaning the other nations would be the ones who inhabit it, destroy it, bomb it, pollute it, do all things as what's going on right now. It says, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled, meaning they reach the height of sin, right? Until their time is fulfilled. And in the fulfillment, they would have done a whole lot of blasphemous, wicked, wretched things as what's going on now. So when we see the continuance day by day of what new laws is passed, what new things is being allowed, what new thing is being shown to us on TV, what new thing is being taught to us in school, all that is reaching that boiling point. It's getting up there and it's getting up there. At the same time, in the parallel, the Most High is raising us up, raising us up, raising us up. And we get to that point. And it's like, boom, they reached their meter. Boom, we've reached our meter. Now it's in it. Their time is fulfilled. Now our time begins, right? So it's the same thing as we're reading here in 2 Maccabees 6:15, lest that being come to the height of sin, afterwards he should take vengeance of us. The Most High chastens us over time, right? But he's going to take vengeance on the heathen. It says, and therefore he never withdraweth his mercy from us. And though he punished with adversity, never forsake his people. So we've been given the bread of adversity for a while, for a long time. But he still loves us. He never destroys us utterly. Never will the Most High have destroyed us utterly. You read that in Leviticus 26. That even when we done all the stuff that we done, the Most High still was going to be a father to us because he made an agreement. He never broke the covenant, we did. So we're now trying to reaffirm that agreement from the beginning when we come back into this truth. We now say, listen, I remember what my forefathers agreed to, which were us in the regeneration, and now we're going to hold to that standard and try to reaffirm that we are your sons and daughters, right? So that was 2 Maccabees 6:13, and I stopped at 17. So now, going back to 2 Maccabees 9, 2 Maccabees 9 and 9. It says, so that the worms rose up out of the body of this wicked man. And whilst he lived in sorrow and pain, his flesh fell away, and the filthiness of his smell was noisome to all his army. It's kind of poetic as it's being written, or as you read it. First thing, it says the worms rose out of his body, right? So we don't get a full sense of time as far as for how much time is transpiring now as he's dealing with this pain, as he's dealing with this plague. But over time, worms start to arise out. You ever see, like, sometimes when you leave bad food out, the maggots and all that stuff start to eat away and start coming forth. You're like, yeah, that's what's going on with him. Now that stuff started to come up out of his. Can you imagine having somebody going through something, all of a sudden the worms start coming up out of his body. I've seen some of this online before, where some people have certain bad types of diseases and they open them up and they can see the worms or whatever in their bodies that they've taken out. Some of it one would think is probably food that they had already consumed and it's festering in their body and it's gotten really into their body. But that's a plague still, right? Because it's still abnormal for that to happen. The Lord says normally when you eat bad food or you eat certain thing, it's still going to go out in a drought. But if the Lord wills it, some of that will affect you negatively and in a very loud manner, as what we're seeing here with Antiochus. So it says again, so that the worms rose up out of the body of this wicked man, and whilst he lived in sorrow and pain, his flesh fell away, meaning his skin, his body started to break down and started to die, started to decompose while he's living. That's like somebody who has like gangrene and they start to amputate you but this was in his inner parts. He's dying from the inside. Worms and everything is starting to come up. That's a horrible sight. Then it says, this is something that even is worded in a manner that it was poetic justice. It says, and the filthiness of his smell was noisome to all his army, right? So a smell is something that, like, oh man, that stink. Oh my gosh. But it said it was noisome to the army, where it was so bad that it caused an alarm to everybody. Everybody started talking about, oh man, this guy he stink. He smelled terrible. What's going on? Never seen this before. The commotion amongst the army, it became too much. Him being the leader, him now had given them the charge and said, we're going to go and bury them place. We're going to go and do this in Jerusalem. We're going to do this. And all of a sudden, like that, this has now happened to him, right? So now everybody's talking about it. He has now a different type fame. Where Judas had a righteous fame, this is a wicked fame that he is now heaped to himself amongst those who are close to him. It says, verse 10, and the man that thought a little afore he could reach to the stars of heaven, no man could endure to carry for his intolerable stink. Man, I can't even imagine how bad that smell is or was, right? If it was that bad, man, I mean, like, and then to see the worms and to see his flesh decomposing, man, that was a loud gesture the Most High put upon him. Because why? He was God manifest on earth. In his mind, he thought that he could reach the stars. He could weigh the mountains in a balance. He could cause the waves of the seas to stop and go. He was going to destroy everything pertaining to Jerusalem, right? And kill off all the Israelites. Shalom, Matt. No. So now reading this again, it says, and the man that thought a little afore he could reach to the stars of heaven, no man could endure to carry for his intolerable stink. It's intolerable. Nobody could tolerate what was coming from his body. Now, let's see what's going to happen. Verse 11. Here, therefore, being plagued, he began to leave off his great pride and to come to the knowledge of himself by the scourge of God, his pain increasing every moment. So now here it is, as he's going through these pains, he's having a self-examination of himself, because usually that's what happens, you know, when you're going through a lot of pain and sorrow, and it's not being tempered. You start to think about, maybe I did something. What was it that I have done or I have done to others to cause this? So here, he now starts to leave off his pride going through all of this, because, you know, sometimes you start to consider the obvious. Maybe it's my time. Maybe I need to, you know, before I go, before anything happens, I need to make it right. Pride sets in when pride starts to go away when you are in despair, when you're going through great turmoil, right? You gotta temper that and bring that down. That's why when we read about what happened with Israel and Egypt with Pharaoh, when those plagues happened and the frogs and the lice and all of that started to happen, the rivers, every drinking water was blood, he realized, you know what? Fine, I'll let y'all go, right? That meant his pride started to come down. Pharaoh was a prideful man. His pride came down. And when it came down, the Most High put the spirit in him. Well, it boosts back up, right? It boosted back up. Pride is a thing, like it tells you, it's the downfall of man, right? It leads you to destruction. It led Pharaoh to destruction. It led Antiochus to destruction when you have that pride set in. So here it is. He's now having a change of heart, or beginning to have a change of heart. So it says again, here, therefore, being plagued, he began to leave off his great pride and to come to the knowledge of himself by the scourge of God, his pain increasing every moment. So as he's talking, as he's considering, it started getting worse and worse and worse. And nobody could even stand his smell. It says in verse 12, and when he himself could not abide his own smell. So now, you know, that's like sometimes, I don't want to say it, but sometimes you pass gas and everybody like, dang, that smells terrible. And in your mind, you're like, nah, it ain't that bad. Y'all just trying to make it a little bit more what it is. All right, it's all right. It ain't that bad. Nah, man, that is terrible. So his stink for a while, and everybody's like, yo, what is that smell coming from you? He didn't think it was that bad. But now he can't even abide his own smell. He's saying, man, damn, I smell terrible, right? That's the realization that things is bad, right? When you really can be honest with yourself and say, yeah, this is not good, right? That's where he's at right now. It says, he said these words, it is meet to be subject unto Yahweh, and that a man that is mortal should not proudly think of himself as if he were God. Now, what's interesting about this is that he's speaking about to the Most High, right? As you read this, one would say, yeah, you can't compare yourself and think yourself to be the Most High, but I'm looking at it from a different angle, because here is Antiochus, who was one of the rulers and kings of the Greeks, right? They just didn't rule over just Israel or try to conquer Israel. They had that whole region. They had a multitude of nations. Remember, we read earlier and with Nicanor and Timotheus, they went and got the Arabians to come help them. So he didn't talk about the Arabians' God or this other nation's God or this people's God. It's coming right back to the Most High God, the God of the Israelites, the God of the Jews. Why? Why did he align himself with that God and not the others? So even him now going through that pride and coming out of it, based on what had already transpired throughout history, they all realized that the God of the Bible, the God of the Jews, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the real power. That's key right here in this verse. Because he could have chose any other God and said, yeah, it's not right for me to be like this false God or that one. No, he knew that the real power is the Most High power. So consider that. There's a lot of others that's out there. They realize and understand that's why this is the most commonly published book in the world over many times. People know that this power, this God that's coming from this book that services and provides for his people, that's the real one. That's why these myths and these debunkers tried to come up and try to discredit and try to defame the God of this Bible for their own escapades because of their pride. But when it all boils down, everyone bows down and submits to the Most High, right? So that's what's going on here. It says, verse 12 again, and when he himself could not abide his own smell, he said these words, it is meet to be subject unto Yahweh, and that a man that is mortal should not proudly think of himself as if he were the Most High God or the Most High Power, right? And how do we know he's not talking about any other God? Because it's going to read on. It says, this wicked person vowed also unto the Lord, the Most High, Yahweh, who now no more would have mercy upon him, saying thus, that the holy city, what's the holy city? Jerusalem, to the which he was going in haste to lay it even with the ground and to make it a common burying place, he would set it at liberty. He's not setting no one else's realm or region or city at liberty. He's doing that to Jerusalem. Why? Why is he doing it? Because he recognized that that is the Most High's chosen people in their chosen city, right? So when you look at the conspiracy, when you look at the confederacy that happens amongst these nations, they realize and they know where the truth lies. They realize and they know where the true people are. They realize and they know who the true power is. Those that are in high positions, those who are the wise ones. Hold this real quick. Go to first Isaiah 13. Isaiah 13, 1 and 2. So Isaiah 13, 1 and 2, it says, the burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos did see. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand that they may go into the gates of the nobles. So now let's look at that again. Lift ye up a banner unto the high mountain, right? A banner is a sign that's exalted above so everyone can see it in a high place. So that banner that the Most High would send out to his prophets or send with his prophets is the word of God. It's the Bible, it's the commandments, it's the prophecies. That banner now is what's being lifted up above all other ideologies and false doctrines and everything else. This one is going to supersede all of them, raised up. It says, upon the high mountain, the high government. A mountain is a government when you read it in the scriptures, right? When he talked about Babylon, old destroying mountain, it was talking about the ruling government, the leaders at that time during the Babylonian captivity. They were the ruling party, but the Most High called them a destroying mountain. So this is now the high mountain that now has to be given the Bible, or read to what the Most High's word or judgment is pertaining to the Bible. And as it's being read, truth comes out. So when people are sitting listening unto the history and the origins of what nation, where this nation came from, what's their true biblical name? Let me give you the history about what your ancestors or the people from your lineage did in the past and bring it forward up into today's time, so that they have their own history and their own records, and they can corroborate these records. They can corroborate this truth. So now they hear this stuff and they realize, man, this is what they're saying is on point. It ain't like that with the other religions. It ain't like that with Christianity, because Christianity is not doing it. It's not like that with Islam, because Islam doesn't do that. It's not like that with Judaism, because Judaism doesn't do it, right? It's the word of the Most High as it is written in the scriptures, in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, and the hidden books known as the Apocrypha. That's where they get that truth from. And it says, exalt the voice unto them, meaning speak loudly, let them hear these words. It says, shake the hand that they may go into the gates of the noble. Shake the hand is like you telling them their wrongdoings, right? You getting on them, you chastening them, you chiding with them. But it says that they may go to the gates of the nobles. Who are the nobles? When you look at a noble, it's someone who's of elite status, someone who's of a wise man, someone who's of prestige, someone who has clout, knowledge, mayhem. So that person is the one who knows. So now when they have their people around them, they now put everything in a balance. They hear this group and that doctrine, this doctrine, that, so on and so on. But this here is on a different level. So they know where the real power is. They understand what the Most High's name, his people, and everything. Because all throughout the four corners, we're now giving them that information. Even back then, that information was broadcast. That information was known. The history was known as far as for what the Most High and his people had done throughout different empires. And when Israel was in wickedness, they now fell victim to being in captivity or destroyed. And that allowed them to rule in their pride. Now, when their pride is brought down, they remember who allowed them to even be where they are. Remember, and you read in Daniel, the Most High says, I raise up kings and bring them down. The Lord does that. And in certain forms, during the Persian Empire, they knew that the Most High put them in there, in that position. Right? During the time of Daniel, Daniel was the one who went to Nebuchadnezzar and let him know the understanding of his dreams that he had to interpret and break it down, because the Most High gave it to Daniel. No other one could do it, but Daniel's power did it. So they understood where the real power lies. And this is why here, as we read this with Antiochus, he's now falling back and he's realizing the error in his way and trying to make amends with the Most High and his people, right? Him going through this incurable plague or disease that's going on in his body, right? So now let's go back and continue reading this in, that was Isaiah 13, 1-2. So now we're going to go back to 2 Maccabees 9. We in the Apocrypha, brother. Okay. 2 Maccabees chapter 9 and verse 14 again. We're on page 149. It says that the holy city to the which he was going in haste to lay it even with the ground, to make it a common burying place, he would set it at liberty, meaning make it free from tribute, right? You ain't got to pay taxes no more, right? You're not going to be subject to our laws no more. You're free to do what you want. Free to govern and rule how you want your realm to be, right? It's touching those whom he had judged not worthy so much as to be buried, right? Think of that, right? So when someone dies, if they was left on the ground, left on the side, he didn't even think they need a proper burial. That was his thinking before. Right. It says, but to be cast out with their children, to be devoured of the fowls and wild beasts, he would make them all equals to the citizens of Athens. So one who he thought that their body shouldn't be put in the ground or put in a sepulcher or put somewhere where it can have honor and a legacy to be remembered, he wanted it to be left so that the birds can come and eat their flesh and let their bones stay on the side. Now he has a change of heart. Now he wants to make them a citizen of the city, of the capital city at that time. A citizen in Athens. That's like when you read in the book of the Acts, when Paul said that he was a Roman citizen. Some people had to pay to become a Roman citizen, or others had to be born there, like how it is right now. Same thing. If you're born here in America, you're an American citizen. If you come over, right, you got to spend a certain period of time and then go and pay for your citizenship, right? Take the test and then pay whatever that fee is to become a citizen of the U.S. Right. And the same thing probably goes for other places throughout the world. Some of them don't even allow you to become. I think in somewhere in the Middle East, I don't know if it's Dubai or one of those places with the United Emirates, they don't even allow you to become a citizen. You can never become a citizen if you're not one that's from that region or one who is from that people, right? Now this is being given to the Jews at this time. Verse 16, and the holy temple which before he had spoiled, he would garnish with goodly gifts and restore all the holy vessels with many more, and out of his own revenue defray the charges belonging to the sacrifices, right? So now he had not just gone there once, he had already gone there before to go and pillage the temple. He had already gotten things from the temple. Now he's saying, listen, I'm going to garnish it. I'm going to provide things in there. Page 149. I'm going to provide new things in there. And out of my own treasury, out of my own kitty, I'm going to provide new things and restore what it was taken away and put gifts in there as a thank you for you guys being good people. Your God being the real God, right? It's like now he's taking away us from paying tribute, and now he's paying tribute to us while we're in the position that we're in, right? It says, verse 17, yeah, and that also he would become a Jew himself and go through all the world that was inhabited and declare the power of Yahweh. So now with all what's going on with him, with all the circumstances, the backstory, brother, this is a man, a Greek ruler who wanted to go and destroy Jerusalem and destroy and kill and massacre all the Jews. The Most High plagued them with an incurable plague. And it was so bad that it stank. His body started to rot. And at that moment, when it began to happen, he had a change of heart and to think now about the Most High and his people, right? Now, he's now paying tribute to us. And now he's going to be an advocate for the Most High. Now he's going to go throughout the world and present himself as a Jew. Now, he's not a born Jew, right? But he's going to carry on the traditions and follow our laws and our commandments and then go and teach this to the others, right? He says he's going to be a Jew. Now, this ain't the first time this happened. When you go back to where we just came from during the times of Purim, go back to the book of Esther, the 8th chapter. Towards the end of the story in Esther, in the Bible. Esther, the 8th chapter. S-E-S-T-H-E-R. Yes. So in the book of Esther, the 8th chapter, and I'm going to read the 16th verse. Let me know when you get it. All right, you got it? Yeah. So it says here in Esther 8 and 16, the Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor, right? So now we was given the opportunity to defend ourselves. We had the king behind us with Queen Esther, and we was given charge to go out there and kill anyone who tried to come against us, right? It says in verse 17, and in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness and a feast and a good day. Then it says, and many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them, right? So it says those other people, those other heathens, they became Jews, right? Now, what does it mean when they say they became Jews?
They wasn't Jews, but they went into the context of being a Jew.
They went into the context of being a Jew.
They want to be accepted as a Jew, just a Jew way.
Right, exactly. So it's the same thing when you look how we was forced to become Greek, right? So now when you're forced to become Greek, or when we was forced to be Greek, guess what we did? we had Greek names, right? That's why you read, we just read about, when you read the New Testament, you read about Timotheus, right? You read a lot about the apostles, but you read their names and they're Greek names. They're not Hebrew names. They're not, you know, names that we align ourselves with, that we like Daniel, Allah, and this and that. They don't have those names. They have Greek names. So they took upon them the customs of the Greeks to become them. So you have their name, and then you start to follow their customs and their ways. So now the people of the realm, it says, because of fear of the Jews, they became Jews. So then some of them now would have Israelite names. They would have Hebrew names, and they will follow our laws and our customs, right, our traditions. They would say, hey, I'm going to keep the tabernacles. I'm going to keep Passover. Can I do this? Hey, I want to keep the Feast of the First Fruits. Hey, I'm going to keep the rededicate. All of these things now they want to follow that's associated with us. What's the dietary law? You guys don't eat swine? I don't eat swine either. I'm like a Jew just like you. So now this is what Antiochus is aspiring to do in his plight that he's got going on. Because like it just said, for fear of the Jews fell upon them, fear of the Most High and his people is now falling upon Antiochus. Again, we in 2 Maccabees, the 9th chapter, and we have verse 17. So that links with verse 17 from what we just read. Now, back in 2 Maccabees 9, and we have verse 18. It says, but for all this, his pains would not cease, for the judgment of Yahweh was come upon him. Therefore, despairing of his health, he wrote unto the Jews the letter underwritten, containing the form of a supplication after this manner, right? So, as we read, he now had a change of heart. And one would think that because he has a change of heart, because he's now allowing the Israelites to be free from tax, free from tribute, now he's allowing us to keep our laws and our statutes and everything else, you would think that he should be given a form of mercy. But no, it's not. That's what happens right now when sometimes certain people do certain things that might be, they say, ah, well, look, man, he did all right. So, you know, they should give him a pass. Most High didn't give him a pass, right? All of what he done, the judgment was already sealed. That's when from the time he said what he said, it says the Most High's judgment was already on. He didn't even realize it, and it was there. So just because he had done these nice gestures, still his fate was done. The judgment of the Most High was done. That's the same thing when you read in Psalms 148. I'm sorry, 149. Psalms 149. Psalms 149. I'm gonna read it real quick. Give me 1 second. Verse 5 to 9. Psalms 149, verses 5 to 9. Let me know when you got it. Psalms 149 and 5. Malak. You can read that with a strong voice. Psalms 149 and verse 5.
Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their bed.
Right. So it says, let the saints be joyful in glory. So when we now get into our position, when the Most High raises us up, it says we're going to be joyful in glory, happy, vibrant, righteous in glory, that the Lord is going to bring that victory upon us. Read.
Let the high praises of God be in their mouth, and a
Two-edged
sword in their hand.
So let the high praises of the Most High be in their mouth, which is the word, the Bible, Christ. And it says, and a two-edged sword in their hand, right? For war. Read.
To execute vengeance upon heathen, punishment upon people.
So this is the prophecy of the Most High, to execute vengeance upon the heathen. So the Most High now already has another judgment written.
Right.
Vengeance has to be executed upon the heathen for what had already transpired, right? It says, and punishments upon the people, right? So they may have a turn face and say, you know what? I'm sorry for what I've done.
It's too late.
It's too late. You still got to get punished, right? That's like if Malak do something wrong in school or something wrong out in the street and they come back to Gabar, right? Gabar can hear it and be like, all right, I hear it, and now Malak has changed her heart. He's like, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do. I did it, but I ain't mean to do it, right?
Yeah.
Gabar can say, okay, I'm glad that you realize they're in your way, but you still gotta get this punishment, right? You still gonna have something taken away. You still have to go through this because I've set it up that way.
Right.
I already told. I made up my mind. I already told you when you do this, this is the consequence, right? So the judgment is already set. So it's the same thing here. The Most High says that the saints have to go and execute judgment, execute vengeance upon the heathen and punishments upon the people. Read.
Bind their kings with chains, and their nobles with fetters of iron.
Right, to bind them, to put them in captivity. Chains and fetters of iron, like what happened to our ancestors when we was in slavery. That now has to happen to them. Right? Antiochus was one who was a king, had a change of heart, gave us freedom. But so what? The judgment is written. The Most High says, my word shall not go out void. Right? The Most High says it, it shall be done. It's not going to be one of those things where it's like, well, I said I was going to do this, but they changed themselves up. So now I can't do that. If that was the case, then we couldn't take the Most High word for word. We couldn't honor his word. So it is what it is, right? No going back, no turning back from it. Read.
Execute upon them the judgment written.
Mm-hmm.
This honor have all his saints. Praise ye the Lord.
It says to execute upon them the judgment written. The judgment is written throughout different books and prophecies in the scriptures. It has to be executed. Man's emotions can't supersede that and say, well, he looked me out. He got me that job. He brought me that sandwich. That should go a ways, right? Most High says, hey, I put him in that position for him to do that for you, right? Jeremiah 15:11, right? The Most High cannot allow the heathen to go and do you right for that moment in time, but that doesn't erase what they have to go through. They still got to go through it. We had to go through our punishment, right? That's that spirit that comes on a lot of times in these last days because of society and how they try to put that in your mind to always be, welcoming and accepting and forgiving and this, that, and the third, which for what we go through internally, the Most High and Yahweh shall tell us about forgiveness. But what happens external, the Most High already got a judgment written. It was written about how we deal with each other, and it was written about what happens outside. That's outside of us. That's why it says, this honor have all his saints. That's only with us. No one else can have that honor to execute that vengeance, to execute that judgment. It only is for the Most High's people at that time appointed when he so determines. So the same thing here now with Antiochus. Someone might be there right now and be like, man, this is the same Antiochus? This is the same guy who was leaving us to be killed and this, that, and the third, and now he's giving us freedom, right? Some will probably have a change of heart.
Right. Would change some people's heart.
It would change some people's heart. It say the gift destroyeth the heart, not the Most High. Sure, he wants to bring all different kind of things into the temple of the Most High and gifts in there. The Most High ain't going to have his heart to change from that. Most High said, you stole it. You took it, and you should put it back.
Right.
But that judgment still got to come.
Got
to get the judgment, and that's what we're reading right now. Back in 2 Maccabees, the Wadah, back in 2 Maccabees 9 and 18, where it says, "But for all this, his pain would not cease, for the judgment of God was come upon him. Therefore, despairing of his health, he wrote unto the Jews the letter underwritten, containing the form of a supplication after this manner." So when he realized he wasn't getting no ends, he wasn't getting no mercy, let me go and put this in writing to have a form of supplication. Let me now just make it right, because I don't see my health changing right now. It ain't getting better. So I'm about to die, right? Verse 19. Say again. He had an incurable plague that the Most High put upon him because he started out to go and try to destroy Israel. Verse 19. And Antiochus, so like Antiochus, king and governor to the good Jews, his citizens, wisheth much joy, health, and prosperity. If ye and your children fare well, and your affairs be to your contentment, I give very great thanks to Yahweh, having my hope in heaven. Right now, he's giving up forms of thanksgiving. He's talking about where his hope lies in heaven, all these things, and it sounds great, right?
Right.
It says, "As for me, I was weak, or else I would have remembered kindly your honor and goodwill. Returning out of Persia and being taken with a grievous disease, I thought it necessary to care for the common safety of all." That's a lie. He just lied, because when we read earlier, when he came out of Persia, he was so upset of him losing the battle in Persia. Then he heard that Timotheus and Nicanor lost the battles against Jerusalem. He said, "I'm going to go level Jerusalem. I'm going to kill them all." But he's saying now, when I was returning out of Persia and being taken with a grievous disease, I thought it necessary to to care for the common safety of all. The reason why he got that disease is because the Most High plagued them for trying to go and destroy Israel. Right. Now it's because of his own wickedness that he had done to others. Now it comes back to him. Now he realizes the error in his way. Right? He could have said that. I had done all this wickedness to you guys and I didn't care for you. And he left that part out. Verse 22, "Not distrusting mine health, but having great hope to escape this sickness." Right? So it's about that sickness. Right? I'm hoping that I'll get some mercy from you and your God to take this plague off for me. Right? That's what happens. Because remember when we talked about this a while ago, that the nations can't go directly to our power. They got to come through us. Right? That's what happened during the time of Abraham. When Abraham had a heathen and the Most High was dealing with, put the plague on him, he had to come to Abraham and petition Abraham to go to the Most High to save him or help him or to show mercy. So now this letter is saying, listen, I'm hoping by me doing these things for you, that your God is going to allow me to restore my health. That's his objective or intention. So it says again, "Not distressing mine health, but having great hope to escape this sickness. But considering that even my father, at what time he led an army into the high countries, appointed a successor, to the end that if anything fell out of contrary to expectation, or if any tidings were brought that were grievous, they of the land, knowing to whom the state was left, might not be troubled." So he's like, listen, just in case things don't go right, like what my father did before me, he left a successor to put everything in order. So if he died, it wouldn't be in turmoil. because that's what usually happens when someone dies a untimely death, quick death, and he has not left that.
Right.
Now you got this person wanting the position, that person wanting the position. This person said, I'm the rightful heir. I should have the seat. I was doing this for him. He was like, nah, I'm going to leave somebody as a successor.
Oh, okay.
So that everybody knows who it is. That's the right order. So now he's preparing for his death and leaving like a will or a last statement about what he wants to happen after he dies.
Mm-hmm.
It says, verse 25, again, considering how that the princes that are borders and neighbors unto my kingdom wait for opportunities and expect what shall be the event. I have appointed my son Antiochus king, whom I often committed and commended unto many of you when I went up into the high provinces, to whom I have written as followeth. So now he's named his son Antiochus Eupator as his successor, right? Who has been already seen here and there. He was young at one time, left with, I think, with Cyrus to be brought up, but people know and seen him. Now that's the one that I'm going to leave to be my successor and king.
Right.
Verse 26. Therefore, I pray and request you to remember the benefits that I have done unto you generally, and in special, and that every man will still be faithful. It's a lot. And that every man will be still faithful to me and to my son, meaning showing an alliance and allegiance, right? I'm hoping that all, especially those who were already under his control in this realm as an ally, now look at his son in the same manner that they looked at him, right? I think, this even when we were doing the service and we was talking about the transition from Moses to Joshua, Joshua was like second in command under Moses. And then when Moses passed, then they accepted Joshua to be next in line to be their ruler. It wasn't a start. It wasn't a big contrast, like someone just came out of the blue.
Right.
He was already there. So now he's saying, listen, I've sent him sometimes throughout the high provinces. You've seen him. You know him. Right. You know who he is. My son, Eupator, right? It says, for I am persuaded that he, understanding my mind, will favorably and graciously yield to your desires, right? So, father like son, you hope he follows the same traditions as the one of four, right? Same thing happened. We was talking about last night in the movie Black Panther, when the son became king. He went back into the underworld or whatever it was to go and speak with his father to find out, get wisdom for him so he can rule like his dad. Right. This is with the same thing now. It's a common thing, especially if you're a righteous man, because you wouldn't want someone who's wicked or evil to have the son do the same thing. Right. But that happens too. But in this case, Antiochus, an evil man, is trying to have a change of heart and thinking that his son is going to rule like him. That's what he's thinking is going to happen. Again, verse 27, for I am persuaded that he, understanding my mind, will favorably and graciously yield to your desires. Meaning all the things that I'm setting up right now, he'll continue that on. It won't just stop with me when I die. Verse 28, thus the murderer and blasphemer, having suffered most grievously as he entreated other men, so died. He is a miserable death in a strange country in the mountains, right? So after all that, then it says that he died a miserable death, right? In the mountains. So when you read this in First Maccabees, First Maccabees, the 6th chapter. First Maccabees, the 6th chapter. I must read, but I'm gonna probably jump because it's the same storyline, but it's worded a little short. It's almost like when you read the Gospels. So I'm going to start at 1, and I'm going to stop at a certain point, and then I'm going to jump down. So in 1 Maccabees 6:1, it says, about that time, King Antiochus, traveling through the high countries, heard say that Elamias in the country of Persia was a city greatly renowned for riches, silver, and gold. So this is what we read in the beginning of the previous chapter, or the chapter that we read now in 9, for the reasons why he went to go to Persia. He went to go and get riches and to pay for the soldiers of those who was fighting in his army. It says, and that there was in it a very rich temple wherein were coverings of gold, breastplates, and shields, which Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian king, who reigned first among the Grecians, had left there. So there's some valued treasures there. The beginnings of the Greek Empire started with Philip the Macedonian, right? And his son Alexander went and ruled throughout a whole region. So some of the great artifacts that he had is left there in Persia. So he's thinking, I'm going to go get them. Okay. Verse 3, wherefore he came and sought to take the city and to spoil it, but he was not able, because they of the city, having had warning thereof, rose up against him in battle. So he fled and departed thence, and with great heaviness, and returned to Babylon. So that's what we read. They came out fighting with their weapons. Why? Because they heard news that he was coming there. So they prepared themselves for a fight. Right? He thought he was going to take them by surprise, but that didn't happen. They was ready. Verse 5. Moreover, there came one who brought him tidings into Persia that the armies which went against the land of Judea were put to flight. That's what we read, what happened to Timotheus and Nicanor. And that Lysias, who went forth with the great power, was driven away of the Jews, and that they were made strong by the armor and power and store of spoils, which they had gotten of the armies whom they had destroyed. So we read about Nicanor and Timotheus, but now we're finding out that even Lysias went against them and didn't succeed, right? It says here, verse 7, also that they have pulled down the abomination which he had set up upon the altar in Jerusalem, and that they had compassed about the sanctuary with high walls before, and his city Bethsur. So we read this during the time of the rededication of the altar. They took down the altar of the abomination, or the abomination of desolation, as it was called. They pulled that down, right? So now he's getting all of more even backstory that we didn't read in chapter 9. He's reading about that now too. Verse 8, now when the king heard these words, he was astonished and sore moved, whereupon he laid him down upon his bed and fell sick for grief, because it had not befallen him as he looked for. And there he continued many days, for his grief was ever more and more, and he made account that he should die. So now here it is, in this storyline, he's already at the point where it appears that he's about to die because of the grief. Now, we read the grief in 2 Maccabees, the 9th chapter, but it just wasn't his grief of what happened with Israel. It was also because of that plague that the Most High put upon him, right? So in 1 Maccabees, we don't get the plague. We just hear about all the turmoil that happened from them losing the wars. We heard about the wars there too, but now we get the plague that came, the incurable disease, the worms that's coming up out of his body, right? All of that now happened. It says, verse 9, and there he continued many days, for his grief was ever more and more, and he made account that he should die. Wherefore he called for all his friends and said unto them, the sleep is gone from mine eyes, and my heart faileth for very care. And I thought with myself, into what tribulation am I come, and how great a flood of misery it is, wherein now I am, for I was bountiful and beloved in my power. But now I remember the evils that I did at Jerusalem, and that I took all the vessels of gold and silver that were therein, and sent to destroy the inhabitants of Judea without cause. So that's what we read already in 2 Maccabees, the 9th chapter. He realized what he had done in Jerusalem.
He didn't want to realize it then?
No, he realized it after he had this issue with his body that the Most High put the plague on. Like I said, when you're going through pains and it's unbearable, you start to think about a lot of things.
Right.
What I could have did, what did I do that I didn't could have prevented this? All those types of thoughts go in your mind. And what came to him was what he had done at Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's going through this, right? So then it says, I perceive, therefore, that for this cause these troubles are come upon me. And behold, I perish through great grief in a strange land, right? So now he realized that he was about to die. And that's where he now wrote that letter that we just read to set up his son after him to rule. It says, then called he for Philip, one of his friends, whom he made ruler over his realm, and gave him the crown and his robe and his signet, to the end he should bring up his son Antiochus and nourish him up for the kingdom. So we read that he had put in the letter in 2 Maccabees 9 that his son was supposed to be king.
Right.
Now we get it here. He calls for Philip and gives him all of his royal apparel, the crown, the robe, and his ring, or the signet that he stamps all of his documents with. You know, back in the day when you watch those the ancient movies, they didn't just do a signature. You had to have the seal. You got to have that seal. If the king's seal ain't there, it ain't official.
Right.
Got to have that stamp on it. So you read a letter, this is from the king, the first thing you're going to look for is the seal. If you ever watch Game of Thrones, even in Game of Thrones, when letters went back and forth, you had that, they put that, the clay or the red thing on there, and they take the seal and stamp it.
Right.
And it seals the envelope. So they look and they see, oh, here's a letter that came from where? It came from this land. And you look, oh, this is the king's seal.
Okay.
So they know right away if the king's seal is on it, it's coming from the king, or he authorized it.
Mm-hmm.
So now that's been given to Philip to give to his son. It says, to the end, he should bring up his son Antiochus and nourish him for the king. So King Antiochus died there in the 149th year of the Greek rule, right? It says in verse 17, we're going to stop here. Now, when Lysias knew that the king was dead, he set up Antiochus his son, whom he had brought up being young, to reign in his stead, and his name he called Jupiter, or good father, or nobleman, noble father, or comes from a noble father, right? So that's what now has happened. He's died, or is dead, and now his son is set up because that he gave them cause or rule to bring him up in his stead. All right. So now stop there. So that was First Maccabees 6. I read from 1 all the way down to 17, which is the same thing that we're reading here in 2 Maccabees 9, but with just different information, like the gospel.
And go into more detail, it started from the first Maccabees, how it come about.
No, the difference is one tells a little bit different information than the other, because when you read it in the other one, it tells you that he was upset because he came out of Persia and lost, and then he got news that all of those who he left in charge failed in going to conquer the Israelites.
Right.
So now he's like, okay, because I lost in Persia and I feel embarrassed, I'm going to go take it out on them. And as soon as he said that, the Most High jacked him up with the plague, right? Now, when you read it over here, you don't get the talk about the plague.
Right.
You don't read anything about the disease that he had. Right. It's just the fact that, oh, now he was laying on his bed with grief, which he did have grief, but he also had that plague and that pain on him as well.
Right.
All right. So now back in 2 Maccabees 9, and the last verse now, verse 29. So it says, and Philip that was brought up with him carried away his body, who also fearing the son of Antiochus went into Egypt to Ptolemaeus Philometor, right? So even though Philip was given the king's royal apparel and royal artifacts. It was given to Lysias, but Philip himself is afraid of Antiochus Epiphanes, his son. So he left and went somewhere else after he died. So, you know, usually when you have that happen, and this happens even right now in countries abroad, where you may have a ruling power and you have certain people who you look at as a friend and an ally, and you have other people who you feel as a threat or may cause insurrection or an opposing faction, right? And then when that person gets to the powerful seat, he now has to go find those individuals and get them, either get rid of them, jail them, exile them, or whatever, so that it doesn't cause turmoil for his new rule. So now as he's getting into power, he was afraid of his son and he left and he bounced. He left. So now before y'all came, that's why I said reading these, especially the Maccabees, because is engrossed around a lot of the Greek and Roman, majority of the Greek, but also some of the Roman history. So you can go offshoot and read about these individuals. You can read about Antiochus Epiphanes. You can read about the history on Antiochus Epiphanes. You can read about the history about Lysias. Now you're going to read more things that they had done that maybe doesn't directly impact the storyline, but it's a part of history. So now when you read other different types of Greek history, or you're looking at certain, like, you know, I went to the museum when I was overseas and I'm seeing all these Greek statues and things of people that was up, and I'm looking at the names, and then I'm like, oh, they go such and such. Is that what he looked like? Wow. And I remember, you can remember and correlate them to what's in the scriptures, okay, right? Or certain regions. You're like, oh, okay, man, you know, if it wasn't for the Bible, I would have never cared about that guy. I would have never known who that guy is. I don't care who this person is, that person is. But now when you see it, you say, oh, now I see. Coincide with the scripture and history. And history, right? Because a lot of times, because of us losing our identity, we don't see ourselves or our ancestry in that region or realm with the Romans or the Greeks, right? How they came into the temples and stole and pillaged the temple. Well, that was us that was there in those temples that they came and made barters, or they stole things out of, or some of us was traders and gave it to them. That was us that was there. That was us in those cathedrals and as the gladiators running around fighting animals and different things, fighting other mighty men of other nations. That was us doing that stuff, right? So when you put that in perspective and you hear these so-called Greek names and you realize that those Greek names are really Jews, Septimius Severus. It's a Greek name, but it's an Israelite person that's really filling that position. Right. That shouldn't be what they look like in the shows. He should be a man of color. Then he puts in a perspective about other people who are aligning themselves with them, right? It just takes it to a whole nother realm of our identity and history. All right. So that concludes the first half of the Sabbath service. Second Maccabees, the 9th chapter. We're going to take a pause because it's the new moon. It's about 11. 1 after 11. We're going to take a little bit more time to enjoy the new year, the feast, get some food here. So we'll probably reconvene, try to reconvene around 2. It's not too long in the 10th chapter. So we'll reconvene around 2 o'clock. Like you said, today is the new moon. It is the new year. So you are free to cook, kindle a fire. So you want to prepare something for lunch or prepare something, go ahead, make a quick thing on the stove, what have you. The Most High has given us license to do that today. So that's why I'm taking a little bit more extra time, just in case for those who are going to do that. And the Lord's will, we'll reconvene, hopefully about Most High's will around 2 o'clock. All right. So shalom, Yashala, and stay tuned for the second half momentarily.